I think everybody in here knows me. It's like this half is former clear measure people, and this half is current folks up for you. So this is Jason Harmon. I'd never met him before, but I've kind of seen him, performing in Austin, so to speak, moving around. I think I came into U-Shift after you had left U-Shift, and they all said, "Hey, you go meet this guy with this great mustache and beard." And I've been trying to meet up with him ever since. So you started the API group?
Yeah. Almost right at 3 years ago. Started the API at the Austin API, Austin API.
Which is a lot of fun. Capital Factory, which is a startup kind of building downtown. We're interested. Great business. So I will let you take it from here.
On audio recording, are you through your mic or just?
I am recording off of that thing. I tested it earlier and it should come through okay.
All right, so Andrew said most of the things about me. As of the end of this next week, I'll not be working at PayPal anymore. I'm moving to Barcelona to work for a startup called Petform. They compete in the space with like certain and stuff. Been at PayPal about 2 years. Was at U-Shift, as Andrew mentioned, helped build their API program, pretty much ground up. Was able to last working and all the good stuff. Done a bunch of blogs, started a meetup here in Austin, which I've now painfully had to hand over. That was like a teary evening. The first night that I let Keith run the whole thing, I kept getting up and he's like, "Sam!" And then I started this like YouTube channel thing, which I did one video for a year ago, and everyone's mad at me for it. I won't promise that I'm going to do more because I've done it so many times that everyone is mad. But anyways, maybe I will. So the job at PayPal for the last couple of years has been specifically to kind of provide a center of excellence for 50 to 100 teams, depending on what part of the reorg cycle you look at, to basically help those teams with whatever APIs they're building. And the initiative was, regardless of whatever service interface you're running, regardless of whatever domain you run, if you're internal, external partner, whatever, we're going to build REST APIs and we're going to adhere to the same set of standards and principles and build a catalog of everything that exists. So we're essentially kind of like API design consultants for all these different teams and working with them. So what I got out of that, just being the way I'm kind of made, is collecting all the mistakes. It's like, what are the things that we saw from a lot of teams who've had experience building some kind of service interface? What are the things that they didn't think about up front that don't seem obvious when you sit down to like design an API that you might maybe have missed? We'll see how much of this you guys, so how many of you guys work on APIs at Mozu or Illusion? Just about everybody, right? Okay. Yeah. Hopefully this isn't too painfully remedial. I would also normally ask how many business folks, but it's a group called Developer or something, and there's a lot of t-shirts, so I think we're good there. I tend to try to be friendly to the product folks too, because at a lot of the events I get invited to, there's a lot of product folks there too, and a lot of this is pre-canned. I'm like moving and stuff, so I didn't make you a freshman deck. So there's not a lot of code or any of that kind of stuff, but I think part of my intention is to always look at like the lingua franca of HTTP and just look at that part of it, because the implementation is going to change, right? Whatever we coded in today will be dead in 3 years, so whatever. So what we'll do is kind of step through some of the basic things and then really look at a bigger picture of kind of process stuff to make things maybe smooth out a little bit, to make API development a little bit more predictable and hopefully rock solid reliable for kind of production type environments, and ultimately have happier developers who use those APIs and who understand your product better by using them. So the first one, again, root full of API developers, probably pretty obvious, is mix up conventions. The idea that you don't really pay attention to what conventions you use. Again, with the idea that every API that you build, regardless of whether they're all separate teams, represents a platform in the end user's eyes, and those end users can often be your internal front-end developers or other API developers. So thinking about the whole picture rather than just my conventions are good and so are theirs, but they don't match up when we look at them side by side. And the common question is like, what's the best? And I don't care. whatever. Everybody has opinions, and they're probably all valid. But pick one set of conventions and stick to it is all that really matters. The other aspect of kind of the basics here is like a confusing usage of parameters. So we have the use of sort of path parameters, query and body and header, but sometimes there's not a consistent pattern of which parameters you use for a given type of operation. So being consistent in how we use those parameters is always important. And for new API developers, that's like a really hard concept to grasp sometimes. It's like, why not use the query string? It's right there and it's in the URL. It's easy. But then in other places, you go, well, there's too much crap. Let's stuff it in the post body, right? So my kind of simple breakdown for it in most cases for I'm used to writing methods or objects is that your path are essentially your required parameters. These are the ones that you don't want them to screw up. If they screw up and forget to use that parameter, then you can't get to the thing, right? You'll just 404. You're not even there. And really, that's all about identifying the resources that you're getting to. It's the most required. Then within your query string, really we're looking that it's always an optional thing, and that it should be largely used for querying collections of things. Right? So that's the name query. That's an easy one. Obviously, there are exceptions to probably everything here. These are rules of thumb. Then body for your post-put kind of bodies, maybe delete bodies if you're really fancy. Should be sort of resource-specific logic kind of stuff versus querying around for things, that sort of deal. Now, there are certainly weird scenarios with search and things like that where you might end up using post. If you guys follow kind of API news last year, it was like the big stink because Dropbox used post for doing some stuff with searching across files because it's big and complicated and the query strings were gross and hard to deal with. And so they use post and they're like, oh, it's not cacheable, it's not yet, what are you doing? Like, it's okay, there are always exceptions. But in general. Then header, I think to me, headers are really platform plumbing, is the way that I think about it. That this is platform-wide sort of global variables, if you will. These are things that, from the client's perspective, I'm going to use this header here, but I know I can theoretically use it just about anywhere in any API that I call on this platform. It should react kind of the same. And again, optional. That required headers. So a weird one that pops up everywhere. I kind of had to come up with a name, and I tend to call it the junk drawer for JSON. And this is probably in part because a cultural issue within PayPal for a long time has been using sort of key value data structures to store things. And instead of sort of abstracting that away and turning that into a concrete model, there's always this interest in putting sort of key value structures in an array and just exposing that. The problem with it is over time, it becomes the junk drawer because nobody keeps track of what keys are allowed to be in there, right? And even if you do, then you have to go through some weird process to get a new key added, and it's a big painful thing. So my recommendation is always go sit through the junk drawer, empty it out, because you're going to find out a lot of crap in this existing data you might have is probably useless and no one's even using it anyways. And instead of having this sort of array of field values, just make it an object. JSON is key value pairs. So that was pretty easy. I did it again. I was jumping in. So there's a video put out on that's the one video thing that I bothered to do. It's 17 minutes, so it's a big commitment out of your life compared to the attention span of the average YouTube user. Part of why I haven't done another one yet, because I suddenly realized none of my topics fit in 2 to 5 minutes. So the one kind of big exception is if the client owns those keys and values, then it's not off limits. If you don't know what the keys and values will be, you're storing some sort of option stuff for the developer who's using the API, then this key value stuff ain't so bad. But if you own the key values, you're just forcing pain on the client developer and ultimately encouraging bad behavior to do that. And I don't know why I said I don't have any required fields. Sometimes I put things down and I forget what they meant. But hang on. But is that all click? See for a browse. agreement, disagreement, confusion. Okay, it's pretty simple. This one is like, I feel like going and fixing every example that I see on sort of how to build APIs, where we show that we use sequential and numeric identifiers. Because 99% of the time, what we're really looking at is a database sequence. And this really creates two issues. One, there's kind of a fundamental, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So first one is, every time something new is created, we add one. It's easy to understand. There's a lot of there's strategic issues. One is, I know how many of that thing have been created in your entire platform. And that can actually provide intelligence to competitors. That can kind of tell us something that we wouldn't otherwise know. In addition, it's the easiest thing in the world to script. Right? I can take this, this number and write a script that iterates through it. And I can even trickle feed it, right? And play and see what things can I get into that I'm not supposed to. So how many of you sort of regularly check into the OWASP top 10 or have heard of it? Pretty good numbers. It's shocking how small that number is. So I had to do an annual, conduct a class for all the AT&T Wi-Fi folks. As that was like our PCI security training is the way it was framed. But it's actually really good to go through this top 10 list. It's basically, what are the top 10 web exploits? And granted, there's a lot of kind of browsery stuff in there, but a lot of it applies to APIs just as equally. It's just really HTTP flaws and kind of web interaction flows. But one of the few that's kept on the list since I think 2007 is insecure direct object reference. So this is another reason why using these sequential numbers is bad, because we tend to think, okay, yeah, I'm going to give you an auto-generated ID, and it's fine because I know what you're allowed to get to and what you're not. But as it turns out, as a broad industry perspective, we suck at that. We're terrible at securing resources. It's the number, way high on the list for exploits. So trusting that you're going to do that is not a good idea. So in a sense, by using a non-sequential string for your resource identifiers, the security advantage is you're raising the bar way higher on this sort of scripting exploit. Because now if the permutation numbers that I have to go through is not 1 through whatever the number is, right? If I started at 1,100 and I go all the way up to, maybe I've got 50,000 numbers after a little while running my API, I can poke every piece of data in there over the course of a month and you'll never even notice, right? Maybe you will, but there's a good chance I can get away with it. As where if we're using a non-sequential string, the number of permutations skyrockets into the millions to be able to even get close to poking at all of them. So right off the bat, you've raised the bar of entry for kind of exploit checking. So obviously, UUID with stuff pops up as an obvious one of here's something that's a non-sequential string with a lot of permutations. They can be a little bit painful of an identifier. So doing some sort of base 28 encoding or something to shrink it down a little bit and keep it most of its uniqueness, that's good too. But ultimately, stay away from the numbers because they're bad. Plus, think about the fact that you're coupling to the database that's underlying it. And now that whole strategy of how you generate identifiers when you move from a SQL database where you get that from a number and you move to some other database format that doesn't do that. Now you've got code that has to keep moving that number, and then the migration process is weird because you've got to keep that sequence flowing between two data sources. By using this non-sequential identifier, you can kind of obfuscate all that away a little bit and hide the fact that you're doing a migration for the clients. All right. The next one is identity URLs. So I have to explain the image. My daughter suggested this for the license here. So I did this one in New Zealand last year, and it was the best. So I kept it through other places that I presented, and I was going to keep it, but I was trying to find something funny for Texas, and it was so boring. The one in New Zealand, when I just searched for New Zealand driver's license, one of the images I was like, wow, it's a really scroungy, bearded looking dude. And I looked, and the license says, last name Wizard, first name V. Has a picture of this big bearded dude and a signature Wizard, V. It's like the Wizard was But it looked legit, it looked real. So anyways, we ended up with this. So the idea here with identity in URLs, when we look at the /users, again, we want to rewrite a lot of examples that exist out there. That's like the first example everyone does. Let's write a /users API, which, you know, the other problem is that Twitter tends to be like the bar of entry for learning APIs. We're going to go look at how Twitter works and use it, which it has a /users, and everyone goes, hey, they have a /users, we should have a /users. Why is that bad? Well, the reason is most of your API users don't need to look at other users' stuff, right? Most of the time, when you make a call as a client developer, you call to get your stuff. You call to create your stuff. Passing that ID around in the URL is really setting yourself up for, again, yet another scripted exploit path, where someone can go play around with what user data can I go fetch that I wasn't supposed to. And we're back in that insecure direct object reference game. Worse yet, user IDs that are sequential numbers, right? Now we kind of double the exploit path. So there's kind of other flavors and varieties of passing these things around in URLs. Another one I'm not a big fan of, I think it works in less secure data, where it's maybe not as important, is passing just like a token string in the URL. And we'll dig a little deeper on why that sets up another set of problems, really for all of this. So the better answer is that like HTTP, as part of 1.1 spec, tells us how to do authorization. There's a header for it. You know, it's a prescribed way. So I'm not entirely a rule follower. I don't always, you know, do what I'm told. In this case, you know, it's one of those ones where I look and go, okay, great. There's a way that I'm supposed to do it, but why do I care? Why don't I do it a way that looks easier to me? So what I would encourage is beyond the URLs themselves and what they might show in terms of exploitability, think about the fact that everything that you call in an API, what gets logged in HTTP logs? URL, right? It's like the thing that gets logged. And a lot of folks turn on that query string logging too. So, you know, we would generally think that like log servers might be easier to exploit, these sort of aggregators we tend to have that pull in logs all over the place. They might be a little easier to exploit than maybe our web infrastructure would be. But the logs themselves essentially form an index of all the identities if we pass that stuff around in URLs. So it makes it a lot easier path. If I now know about a SQL injection exploit on your web front end, I can maybe go use your logs to go find a very effective means of poking at all the accounts that exist through that SQL injection. Versus if I only know my own user ID, or maybe I don't even know it at all, I just have some token that I use to access my data, then it's really hard for me to dig around that database and dig out specific user data. Make sense? So basically, again, the idea is authorization header, I'm passing who I am when I call. That could be complicated, right? In the PayPal world, who I am could be representing 3 to 4 different parties in a given transaction. So that might not be as simple as user ID. And that's another reason not to pass it the URL. Get into these games of, I'm calling on behalf of someone else, but you have no audit trail for it. So by logging an authorization header, maybe internally you take what you externally had as a token, obviously we sort of rehydrate that into an object, and now we can pass around more context about not only who's calling, but who are they calling on behalf of, and who else is involved in that transaction that's happening. And give us a place that, from sort of a security auditing standpoint, or maybe a financial auditing, we can go back and look at what happened in that. Versus if we pass around the URLs, query strings, they're never the same. They're going to be different on every URL. And now we have this job of trying to figure out all the different places identity got passed around. And so auditing that becomes a lot harder game. We end up having to do it on the back end, which is a lot less fun than, again, our plumbing, the header, the global variable, the one place. And more importantly, all these servers, proxies, intermediaries, all this stuff out there our traffic passes through, knows by the spec, don't log the authorization header, right? That is off limits. You can log all kinds of things. You really shouldn't log the authorization header. Granted, you can be a dumb developer or DevOps guy and configure things to make it do it, but generally speaking, productionalized systems don't do that. So it's a safer place to put that identity information. So, like some of this stuff's scary sounding things with, you're going off and you build some APIs, especially the back-end stuff. The internal stuff is where these things tend to pop up all over the place. We have user APIs with no authentication, we pass an ID. That stuff happens at a shocking number of places. But I think like most of it's pretty simple fixes, pretty simple changes from the security standpoint. I think for me, by the way, that's my dog. So to me, like the first thing is if you don't have standards for how you do these things, you will have a proliferation of differences between all APIs, not only in terms of consistency of conventions, but also in how you pass around security and identity information. That stuff gets away from you really quick. And really, like, I think there's a bad mental association with standards sometimes that we're going to go off and write this really formal, RFC must, should, given, when, then, like really fancy syntax for it. But to me, like, just writing something down, like, have you ever done a social contract exercise? So this is like a common thing when they even do it in like kindergarten classes, all the way up to like business, team building. To say, let's write a social contract. We're all going to write down the rules that we should all engage in our daily lives. And the truth of the matter is, social contracts almost always look the exact same. It's like you should listen to others. You should be trustworthy and honest. It's always the same things. And I think to some extent, like writing down standards is like a social contract experiment or exercise for all these different teams that are building APIs to go through. To sort of agree, like these are the things that we say we're going to do. And in truth, they're not that different between a lot of companies. And one might argue, why don't we just have REST API standards that everyone sticks to? It is an architectural pattern, not a standard. So I think my interest in this is not only write something down, but do your best to create a way to scrub it and sanitize it, tag some of the sensitive proprietary stuff, and share your standards. So I've been encouraging a lot of companies to do this. We're slowly but surely seeing more and more of them pop up. And the reason is if we can all swap notes on how we're doing all this stuff, we can start to identify more and more patterns. There's been some interesting data coming out of APImatic.io. Guys heard of that? They do SDK generation. So what's cool about it is everybody that tries to generate SDKs, you upload like your Swagger or Ramble or Blueprint, and then they generate pretty good idiomatic code in a variety of languages to build you an SDK wrapper. And it's been cool watching them sort of instrument all this stuff and come up with how often do post operations have query string parameters. Right? A lot. Usually a post to do a body. All this kind of stuff. The weird thing is there's an archaeology to this stuff. And I think by mid-2000s, there were some silly things being done when folks are transitioning out of the SOAP world and trying to understand this kind of REST world. And so it's hard to sift out about what that means. There's some other folks too that are like APIs, APIs.json. It's like a search engine for APIs in a sense. It does a little more than that. It's for indexing other API specs. So some folks are using it for their microservices to give them a way to index a bunch of different Spider definitions for all our internal APIs and build that catalog. So again, like Ken Lane started that and digging through it, sifting through these things. It's hard to come up with what are the most consistent, the most recurring patterns that we see. So to me, like if we can't figure it out from the data because of the archaeological problem, the older it gets, the weirder it gets, then maybe if we just talk about what standards we're doing, what are the patterns that we're trying to enforce within teams, that more and more companies will find the things that we're all doing the same and come up with kind of de facto standards. And I'll point out too that, so I shared something for PayPal, we called it the style guide, mostly because the Java guys flipped it in when I called it a design pattern. It's well, like design patterns, that's a whole new word. How dare you? And it's kind of weird, right? It's like, here's the patterns that I was going to design things versus like, here's how every single header works. So it's a little bit more of a vignette of the overall standards, because obviously a place like PayPal where everybody wants the rules, it's a lot of information for the total standard. But you know, the other advantage is if you end up with these sort of, there's probably some folks in the room here who get bugged a lot with, hey, I'm going to do this, what should I do? The more that you write it down, the less you have to answer those kinds of questions. So another a way to kind of move that forward is this question of do we build first and then document, or do we design first and then build? And I'm kind of fascinated by the traditional design world, right? Not even necessarily UX, but just like design as a discipline. And they always use this image of particularly right? And I gotta admit, I don't know why, I just put it up there as like a question mark. But it's basically supposed to like, say that like it's the debate that you design first or build first. But to me, it's really not that reasonable of a debate when you look at the process in practice, which is like designing first produces much better results. It produces and builds parallel logic processes. You can kind of design up what you're going to build, share that with the folks that are going to be using it, especially in internal projects, mobile projects. Let them go off and start playing around with it, start getting feedback while you're building. So what I would encourage is look at the design world a little bit, because they're going to think about this a hell of a lot longer than we have. And there's this idea of design thinking. You're going to be like reading on the subject. Okay. I've found this consistently. Developers think that design is something else. That we do computer science. We are scientists at it. Design is fluffy, flowery stuff that we don't touch. Right? That's button clicking. I don't click buttons. I build systems. But the truth is, like, we're all designers in a way, especially if you're building API interfaces. You're absolutely designing an experience for developers to use it. So think like a designer feel a little bit when you put on that cap of that building. When you look through design thinking, it's pretty fascinating when you think about building an API that we're going to look at the human loop. That everything we design is social in nature, right? That humans will use this. Yes, the machines will use it too, but we got to think about the people that actually call this thing and make sure that they can rationalize what they're looking at. Ambiguity, it's a weird one to get. It's basically the idea that when you ask somebody to use an API, if you ever watch the UX world do this, they've gotten really good at it now. They got like eye tracking machines and like, there's like measuring muscle twitch and just freaky stuff to see like what is it that they're not getting? What is it that seems ambiguous when they go through this? And preserve that above almost all of it, above everything else when you're seeing how somebody uses it. So when someone's trying to use your API and they're curling away trying it out, and they pause, that's it. Okay. So you pause. What's the thing you're confused about? Where are you going to read the docs because the field description is full of acronyms or abbreviated so much that, what does PMT mean? It could mean a lot of things. If you're doing a payments API, it probably means payments, but it could be an acronym for some Eastern European financial regulation. I think that's the thing. Redesign. This is also the idea that we never design anything new. And I think the API world is very easy to see this true. Most people, like the first API you ever built, how many of you went and looked at like Facebook and Twitter? That's like a really common thing. There's probably other brands I could ask. The point is, when you decided to build something, you went to go look and see examples of what you thought good was. Right? So we're always imitating something when we design something. So the question is, what are we imitating and why? Why are we imitating Twitter's API? Are you building a social network by where people will send around 140 character messages? Probably not. That might not be the best place for you to start for building a, since it seems like we mostly have a Bluetooth crowd here. If you're building shopping carts, that might not be the best place to start. So are you looking at competitors? Do they do a good job or not? Are they a better competitor than you are? Is that something you should emulate? You have to measure all that stuff and take it into account when you're thinking about why are you doing it this way. And then tangibility is my
treasured, most favorite piece. And this is where the design first process in designing your API up front before you build it is the most important. And I'll show you what I mean, but basically it's the idea of tactile feedback. You can tell me how you're going to design it, but until I can touch it and feel it and play with it, I don't really know. And I can tell you what I think about what you're designing, but until I actually touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it, it doesn't mean anything, because it's way lower value feedback. And we can do that with APIs and get tactile feedback. So we'll go back to that one. There's all this other concept stuff that I won't dig through a whole bunch, but there's a whole discipline for this, and I would highly encourage, read up on design thinking. It's a really cool way to kind of rethink the process of how you sit down and say you're going to design some systems and design APIs. To me, it's the aspect of the architectural world that's missing. There's a discipline to it that folks just don't think about. We're building a system as a piece of science, which is great until other developers try to use it, and then they want to throw a rock at it. Because you built something they can understand. So, really, when we talk about design first in APIs, we're using some sort of spec-driven process. Using the sort of, well, I'll now say Open API, and I'll stop saying Swagger, since that's a new thing, right? Anybody's seen the Open API project, Open API initiative, Open API spec? No? Okay. So Swagger, long story short, got bought by Smart Bear, which is weird to buy an open source project. I still don't know what that means. No one can tell me. I think in essence they bought the brand from the open source maintainers. Kind of got some bad feedback from the community. Why did you do that to our thing that was untouched by API vendors? And did the right thing, and donated it to the Linux Foundation. So it actually emulates the exact same principles that the Open Container Initiative runs on, which is what Docker did for their stuff. They started building this thing, people said, great, you own it, we want to all own it. And they opened it up. So Swagger's trying to do the same thing. It's weird because it's a spec, not like Docker. But there's like a whole board you can get in it. I'm on that one. But there's also RAML and Blueprint, which is run by API. These are just ways to describe the API. For any of you that did the SOAP days, I see some gray hair in here like me. Probably some SOAP developers in here.
I got rid of mine. No more gray.
Yeah, you died away. You washed away the SOAP. Sorry, SOAP time. So, it's not unlike the whistles that we use in the SOAP world, but I think a little looser and not quite so prescriptive and not the solution to end all things. So maybe it doesn't do everything perfect. Every one of these has different strengths and weaknesses, but they're tailored for kind of REST API world. Why it's important to use this sort of description tool is first we can describe what we're going to build. We can use, instead of the marker board and taking a picture and then trying to remember what that chicken scratch was, we can type it up in a spec. RAML, Blueprint, Open API are all now in either Markdown or YAML. So YAML is Open API and RAML. Blueprint uses Markdown. That was weird in my opinion. Basically, it's pretty easy to sit down and write out not a bunch of curly brackets and quotes with the YAML type format. It's easy to type out what you're going to build while you're discussing it. So that's the tool that you use to collaborate on the APIs you're going to build. And the beautiful part is it's text, so you can PR it, you can merge it, you can do normal things, all in design. So it's the whiteboard, it's the scratch pad for what we're going to build, which is fine. You could do that a number of ways, right? You could just write down what you're going to build in some random format you like to write things down in. What's interesting, and I think this is an emerging field that is coming together. I've been working with a couple different folks at Apple mainly on coming up with a format for sort of policy enforcement, if you will, or the G word as I call it, governance. Probably the most loaded word on the deck here that makes everyone cringe. But as we said, that there's these things that we need to do for consistency. We need to make sure that to be secure that we're not messing around certain things in URLs, that our conventions are the same everywhere. Guess what? That's policy enforcement. That's governance. Even if it's a 10-person team, that's what you're doing. It's okay. You don't have to have a monthly board that meets and stares at you with backlit, dark silhouettes and glares at you. It did those in the circle. AT&T, how horrible. And this automated thing, and kind of call into this thing, didn't know what you were doing. They would just say that you passed the thing, yeah, and then ask you weird questions that didn't make sense. It's confusing. So my point is, a lot of the stuff we talked about, we can actually automate. And I don't think there's a great way to do this today. Within PayPal, we ended up building our own sort of validator tool that any API that got built out, describe it in a spec, and before you start building it, make sure that it passes the validator. Now, about 80% of the standards got caught by that. The rest is largely subjective, discretionary stuff. You can't find workarounds. Right? And if you can, I'll buy it. That's a weird one to get right, especially with business lingo. To say, like, did you put an underscore between those two words? Or what's the word in business APIs? Really hard to find. So there's little things like that you can't catch. And, like, do these terms actually fit our customer DSL? Do customers understand what that word means in your URL or in your fields? That you really have to have product knowledge to know if you're using customer data, which is also another important concept.
Yeah. So, PayPal, you use YAML or utility tools and then build your validator against.
So we actually oddly used Google Discovery doc format, which is what Google uses to kind of index all of their different API products. I think they decided in 2012 or something to do that, and at the time, none of these other formats really had any kind of head start. And the one advantage to it is you can use pure JSON schema, which kind of seemed good at the time. As it turns out, the JSON schema is full of things that are not made for APIs. So that had its own set of problems. Swagger API uses a subset of JSON schema to take away like the weird, anybody use JSON schema a lot? Yeah, okay, so like one of any of some of the weird syntax we got before are things you shouldn't really be using in APIs, and if you are, you're doing it wrong. So there's stuff like that to take out. So yeah, we used Google Discovery Doc, which a big part of joining that Open API initiative was getting everybody in the company on board with, we're going to stop doing that and stop building all these in-house solutions for doing all this automation and start open sourcing more of it using the Open API spec. That way, A, we take advantage of what the community's already done and start contributing. So the next piece is, so you're going to go off and build this API, and I think it's a pretty common story that, yeah, we built ours, but then we found out this other team built something really similar, and there's a bunch of functional overlaps. So now we have a project to merge these two APIs, and all of the front-end developers have to adhere that in the next 6 to 18 months. And suddenly you built a whole new project just by duplicating work. So the discovery piece, I think discovery, a little bit of loaded work. You can't tell I'm obsessed with words and what they mean. It's part of working in APIs all day. There's actually a trend toward hiring linguists to do this kind of job, which I think actually makes a lot of sense. And I'm not a linguist, but discovery, there's like tiers to that. The discovery I'm talking about is within your company, you're building a bunch of APIs. You want to make sure that teams know what you're about to build. So as soon as you've proposed something, you've got a spec for it, mark it as proposed in this internal developer portal that hopefully you have in the you should be thinking about a place to catalog what you guys have built. Show folks what's coming, because it serves as a built-in feedback point. If somebody's looking around in the catalog and they go, oh, there's a new proposed, I don't know, checkout API. Holy crap, I'm going to go look at this. Let's see what it's all about. And you start getting feedback. That's great. Feedback's good. It's hard, but it's good. And then also it gives you the ability to tell everybody when something goes live. And you may already have means of doing that, but a lot of times those are means that only make sense in the development team. When you have product folks, when you have other teams involved, they might want to know when this go live. This can serve as a way for you to sort of mark the status to say something's live, planned, whatever phase of your process is in. And none of the spec formats do that status stuff by default, but it's easy enough to sort of generate some functions. So the important one, going back to the design thinking concept of tangibility, that tactile feedback, is that if we're going to design an API in a spec format, the moment that we finish that and we commit it to source control, we have the ability to stand up and mock it in front of it. It's a fake API. And if we did our job in that spec, we also produced example requests and responses. And by doing that, it's a very, it's admittedly a cheap fake API. But the point is that your front-end Node developer or your Android and iOS developers can now go sit down and write some code and call your fake API. That feedback, I promise you, is 99% better than sending them documentation. Here's a Word doc or a PDF or she had the whiteboard picture that we took of what we're going to build. They're not going to be it, right? And you're all developers, you don't need you code. It means stuff. So the mock endpoint gets code in the cycle before there's any code on the back end. And so you're getting feedback earlier, and early feedback is cheap feedback. Late feedback is very expensive. Finding out that, hey guys, we're almost done with the API, you're ready to see it, this is going to be exciting. You show it to them all, they come back a half an hour later, what the fuck are you guys thinking? You missed this whole area. You're going, oh my god, the whole project's going to be late. The whole front-end team can't do anything now. They're stuck. They have to replan their whole sprint. We have to go back, replan our whole sprint. Everybody's stuck. So early feedback cycles, small changes early are cheap. And everybody can kind of iterate and work in parallel, building the front end on the assumptions that you built into this back-end design before it exists. So, pretty cool. For what it's worth, for the U-Ship mobile app, this is exactly how we solve our biggest problems with API development and building mobile app. The first 3 to 6 months was really not good. Constantly having these stop and start pitching things before we realized, create a mock, provide a design, and everything was smooth out. I wasn't getting called into boardrooms or talking to executives about why we were taking so long and why everyone was so mad. It just goes away. So it's a shockingly effective approach.
Then you just implement those endpoints and return a response object.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways to do this, I think. So if you're using these spec formats, there's kind of freebie ways to do it. I mean, Apiary now also, they're the ones responsible for the blueprint format. They also actually now support Swagger with the API as well. You can just drag a slider. Ramble does the same thing with their Ramble tooling. You just drag a slider and it stands up a fake endpoint. I believe in Apiary, you can actually tell it what backend to point to and drag another slider that turns the live backend on and off. So if you move it to example, you get the example from the spec. If you move it to real, you get the response from real. At U-Ship, we weren't actually using spec formats then, which I've learned a lot about in the last couple of years. So that's why I have it recommended now. I was still too wisdom poisoned at the time. So you can also just put a cheap data store, using Mongo or something, behind your API server. Write 5 minutes of code to basically stub out a controller, and then drop in some annotation that points it to the fake backend. You just shove JSON objects into this table, map to given URLs and verbs. So that's a very cheap way to do mocks. Again, in retrospect, I do it in spec now if I do it again. But if you don't have the spec-driven process and all that, and you just want mocks, there's a lot of ways to slice that. It's pretty simple. And the question is, do you want it to then flip to live? I think we ended up throwing an extra header, kind of custom header for internal use that was they can pin themselves to the fake response with this header that wasn't externally documented. And then when we were ready to get the live response, strip that header off the request, and all of a sudden start getting the real API response. That way they can control, even if we said it's live now, they can still keep getting the fake response for a while. PayPal is struggling to get moving on this part. But again, a lot of that had to do with the fact that spec format wise, we're using something that there's no open source community around it. And the kind of open API world has surged ahead. Rail's done pretty well in the open source world as well. So, if you started from scratch with this kind of stuff, I mean, it's 5 minutes to stand up and mock. Even if you, assuming you can stand up an instance cheaply, right? Taking that part out, putting it on an open source mock server is simple. Using it in a hosted service is like a 2-second process. A lot of times it's on the other floor. All right, so a lot of times by this point, I get like a lot of swarming developers, like, all you've talked about is crap that doesn't include me building something, right? I'm here for me, and I want to build code and make stuff. So again, like the reason to do that discipline stuff up front, and I know like a lot of agile advocates like corner me and go, going through all this stuff, you're doing too much design cost up front, you should be rapidly iterating. But I think that's a misunderstood concept. It's okay to spend some time on design up front. The important part is where's the feedback loop, right? As long as there's a feedback loop as soon as you start designing, you are rapidly iterating. There's not rapidly iterating in the most expensive part of your operation, building backends. So the key here, and this is another emerging field, another hard part that you probably have to do yourselves today, but I think in the next year or so will change, is matching up what you built actually matches the spec that you started with. Another area that we've struggled with a lot of PayPal, mostly because there's things we've done a lot of different ways. I've also done a lot of work in the last year or so with Braintree, a startup that we acquired at PayPal, and totally new kind of scratch-built platform. It wasn't before. We've been working on building some new stuff, so we're able to bake some of these things in. So if you're doing some sort of acceptance testing, like I know you guys make a big .NET shop, like SpecFlow is a popular option for describing DDD scenarios. Right? That's getting more and more popular in the API world. Doing Node stuff now. I would encourage you to look at the last Austin API meetup. There's a guy, James Messenger, who built a Node Swagger parser and a bunch of other Swagger tools. He now works for Postman, which, if you didn't know, started up an office here in Austin a couple of months ago. Did a comparison of all the different DDD flavors that you can use for API testing and strengths and weaknesses. It includes some like really ninja stuff with like making and integrating with Postman, which is cool. That's an awesome talk. It's on the Capital Factory YouTube channel, and then I'll get the links. Organize it here and we'll get or send you guys anything else. But point is that if you're using some kind of acceptance testing suite that calls your API as a client to do a test, are you guys doing something like that now? No? You should. Unit tests are not particularly effective at testing whether or not APIs work, especially once they're deployed and they're behind all kinds of other proxies and servers. But that's a good spot to drop in a validator that ensures that when your client calls this API and you get a response, that it match the spec schema. That's a good spot to do it. Another approach is in your live request handlers. So you're getting an incoming request. That spec actually gives you the opportunity to define a schema for your request bodies. And now you can actually use that to do cheap validation of things like your field lengths, field types, just all the cheap stuff you don't really want to write code for. The schema will do that for you. And it's part of the spec you originally designed for you if you did it right. So that's pretty handy. There's a lot of ways basically to use that request response schema to validate things through various phases of testing and eventually in your production. So that's a big opportunity that I think folks are starting to catch on to, and I think more and more projects will come. Unfortunately, I think I ran out of runway to open source some stuff I was working on, so hopefully a little bit for me. Then, and I jumped ahead again. Sorry. This was do it in your server request responsive in the app. This is what we're going to be testing. So now that you've gone through all this trouble with this design thing, you baked it all in all over the place. There's kind of this like, why did you go through the trouble since then? There's a lot of other ways to solve those problems. I think once you see some of the stuff in CI, and you realize that I had tests that ran that actually checked my spec against what we originally designed. If you don't have that in there, you can run off the rails real fast. The docs start getting misaligned from the implementation, that sort of stuff. When you do have it and it's all lit up in CI, it's the best feeling in the world as a developer to push out an API change. I updated the spec, everyone reviewed the spec change that I made, I implemented the change behind it, I pushed it out, and I'm 100% confident that the spec matches the implementation. So the CI piece is critical to giving, again, you as a developer, a feedback loop to know that everything matches out. So after going through all that trouble and we did everything right, it works as designed, right? This is the other piece of the whole deal is go off and use your API. If you haven't ever sat down and built a sample app against the APIs that you built, there's probably things in there that you would discover that customers have been telling you for a long time that you're missing. It's always like, have any of you guys ever written code that calls the APIs that you built? 1, 2, 3 months, okay. Were you assigned to another team that built front ends? Just because.
Well, more from the validation side of things.
On the validation side. So
right.
letting test stuff.
Well, test stuff, but just what you're talking about more specifically is to validate that it's an enjoyable experience using the API.
So this is the part where like all the automation in the world, all the like spec-driven format, all that stuff, you can still just do really stupid stuff. It doesn't need the flow in which people use things. I think if there's a single big lesson that I learned from helping design, 150 repos of specs for APIs that PayPal has been, that flow in APIs is impossible to automate, and it's the easiest thing to get one. So one API with one use case, almost anybody can do that. A flow through a variety of APIs and a lifecycle that your developer or customer is using, that stuff is where everything falls apart. Unless you look at it holistically, and you don't learn that stuff until you start writing code. So I would love to tell you that I've always written code for every API I help design, and I haven't. I've encouraged other folks to help. For all the PayPal public stuff for the last years, that's been the case more and more, is start trying to use it in realistic scenarios, and preferably use it in some error type scenarios. You have to easy to get right in the error scenarios. Looking at what happens when I do it wrong somewhere along the way. How can I break this flow? That stuff is like, you just have to look at it. So all the other automation stuff kind of goes out the window and is irrelevant if you didn't think about how the humans use it. Again, back to our design thinking thing, the human piece matters, right? That's all I got.
So using on that, when you say write some code, test it, a mobile app, a desktop app, or a web app.
Yeah. I mean, it depends, right? So if you're building like a sort of core user management tier for your whole platform, probably not going to write a mobile app to go call. Doesn't make sense. But if you're building something that's intended to be utilized in all these environments, then you have to play around with a couple of them. You get like if you have like an open dev day or something like that, it's time that you have to play around with things, or maybe you're just like hyper aggressive with caffeine and then sleeping and play with things. Basically, use some of the cycles to build those sample things. They don't even have to be fancy. A lot of times, like just looking at how would this integrate? So obviously you guys are in the shopping cart world, so if I have an inventory management system, you guys do inventory management side?
To some degree, yeah.
Well, let's say you're using not Illusion inventory management. Imagine that I have that system with its own identifiers. How would I integrate that, how would that flow through, right? Like, come up with those scenarios of how would you use this in maybe a slightly serendipitous way that could be plausible in reality, but maybe you don't sell it that way. That stuff is where things are really kind of intriguing. I know with like PayPal, like billing subscription stuff, we've got some black eyes for some of that kind of flow stuff, where it just realistic flow, like there's some holes in it, on there. Migration paths too. That's another piece that like you just have to look at it and rationalize through it. If you had some older API, some SOAP thing, or maybe an SDK only kind of option with an extracted API behind it. The question is, if you're building this great fancy REST API, why in the hell, as a developer using it, bother to switch? What's the selling point for me? What makes it easier? What's the value that's added to it? Granted, that's kind of a broad question, but I don't know. I think I'm also, you probably catch on that a lot of what we're talking about here is really a product management kind of overall lifecycle management process. And I think in my experience, the API world is very short on technically literate, API comfortable product people. So in my experience, it's on the team to do things right from a product standpoint, and own it a little bit more than a lot of other teams do. So that's where this kind of stuff comes in. It's like making sure that if I have an old system and you're going to come and ask me to move to the new system, try out building a fake migration. Make sure that you have affinity with your identifiers. If you have hierarchy in your system, that there's some way to get from the way it used to be to the way it is now, even if it's better. Yeah, but open book is really interesting. So that's where I got most of that stuff from. I know I'm totally turning the wake up over there. I can already tell you don't. It's kind of unfair for you with only it's easier when it's like.
For all the people that don't work at Volusion has 20% time, just as incentive to come here so that you can hack on stuff that you're building. We have 20% time. 1 day a week, you can do whatever you want to do. It's a new thing for us, but we're seeing a lot of people investing in their own knowledge, like go learn Node, go learn technology X, and so it's an investment in yourself. But then you bring that back to the conversation when we're actually building other stuff here. So it's been a good thing.
Yeah, I think like the company hackathon concept, there's absolute value in it, but to some extent, like an open dev is a hackathon. It's just one without some cheesy prize
or without the pressure of a competition, right? So at your own pace, at your leader.
I mean, the best stuff that I went out of open dev, I did it over probably 2 or 3 months of open dev, taking away at something half of open dev day. Just chiseling at it a little bit at a time, and then eventually there's something that's alive, and then that opportunity arises at work, and somebody goes, "Hey, we need a thing that does this." I gotta show you something.
Yeah.
What do you think about this thing?
In a hackathon environment, it's like I have 24 hours and pizza and soda, and I'm going to use my health and build something in a day. It's not going to be any good. You can't use anything in a good day. That's barely a proof of concept, right?
It generates entertaining code, though. You get fun comments and
yeah, I wish there was. I think I've struggled with the concept of like writing code against an API to build a requirement. The import stuff's so much easier in that regard. It's basically like we did. So the PayPal stuff is basically like a checklist of things you have to have done, most of which get checked off in an automated fashion. Like one of those is that you get client feedback. And it's self-reported, right? It's up to those API teams to say whether or not they did. And they always answer yes, but the hope is that like they're at least reaching out to the teams that have been using it and saying, hey, here's the design we have. You can try it out, whatever, if you have them on.
I have a quick question. When we talk about specs, besides Apiary, are there other tools that you use for experience to bring that are specs for API?
So in terms of like editing and all that stuff, I'm really excited, and I will give the caveat that I'm an advisor for them, but actually here in Austin, there's a team called Stoplight.io, and they're building it's just shockingly comprehensive how they're looking at it. The editor portion is spec agnostic, so you can design the spec regardless of what you're going to export it to. And I think they actually store it in a link spec internally, but it's all full of all kinds of extensions to make it portable to the other formats. But then, like, you can go from that editor and like build up that portfolio and like generate documentation and do tests that are tied into it. Like, they're doing all the things. It just launched officially a couple of days ago, so it's been downloadable for like 6 weeks or something. So probably some rough just amount up, but I think if they go down the track they want, it's pretty amazing. As far as like other visual editors, I just haven't seen a lot of them. Most like the Swagger's always had the Swagger editor that you guys built. And it's nice because it does some like IntelliSense kind of stuff, and once you get used to the structure, like I can fly through it and it's fine. Random has a real similar thing. They have like a harmon workshop or something like that. And then Apiary does kind of the same deal, but it's basically the idea that if you're just writing a YAML or markdown kind of stuff, like you don't need a lot of tools to do that. I think the hard part is if you don't know the structure of what those spec formats look like, you have to like have an example next to you and go back and forth. And the examples that are out there aren't super superb. I'm super happy because for the OpenAPI stuff, I just finally got my co-collaborator to hit the merge button after months of not sitting down and looking at it. It fits a bunch of examples. But like, you're not comfortable, you don't have great examples, it's nice to have an editor that gives a good structure, and it's one of the rare ones.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
The picture of the wax stamp with the mustache in it.
Oh, that's a real thing.
Is it your thing?
I totally forgot to mention it. You guys ever heard of StackMob? They used to do like mobile advertising and stuff like that. PayPal bought them about the time I started there. So one of my favorite teams within the company, they basically shut down the StackMob product and gave these guys some big responsibilities. I ended up working with them again at Braintree and worked with them a lot on getting their guys to push as far as we could, because that's some really hard domains to deal with. And they actually went off and thought it was funny to order that off of Etsy. It's actually a little stamp with like a little wax clip that comes with it. Because I didn't have a beard before, it was just a deep mustache. Like I did it as a group and then it stuck.
It's your brand.
It's like distracting away so I can look normal again. So yeah, I did a mustache stamp. The joke was that I was stamp designed with a mustache.
It's pretty cool. And the second question is, what's your preferred stack technology-wise for building APIs these days?
It's like...
If the shorter list is things you don't want to build APIs in, that's fine too.
Yeah. I mean, I think with code stuff, like, I just look at it that, it's a tool to do a job. There's different languages that you can use better. So, like, like I picked out all the front end stuff has transitioned out of Java and Node, and now everything in the front end Node is just been rubbish. Way down overhead. The code is much smaller and easier to deal with lots of stuff. So the thought is always like, why aren't you doing Node on the back end anymore? But it's like when you're dealing with money, you have to do certain things a certain way, and you have to be really careful. And with Node, it gives you a lot of opportunities to not be so careful.
Right.
So, Java has stuck around and done it pretty well. I'm weird in that, like, I really like working in Python. Like, I just like the way it works. But I go off and build a whole new system in it. I think there's a limit to that. I like it mostly because I do a lot of this kind of stuff, like teaching people stuff. And it's a fantastic teaching language. And I can crank out little samples and stuff like super fast. So I don't know.
Okay.
I'm very, I would say I'm a polyglot, but that would imply that I'm fluent in all of them. I think
right.
I'm fluent in none. Because everything
right.
starts to look the same.
Yep.
I never get the syntax right. Just stick with one you want.
We're starting to look more and more at Lambda and specifically Node. One of the products is being built out in Node. So for
The whole Lambda Amazon thing.
Yeah.
Freaks me out.
what
It's
part of
like
it?
the ultimate vendor lock-in. It's vendor lock-in on a level that I've never seen before.
So then you have the serverless guys,
Use this like config file or use this proxy.
right?
Get like kind of locked in, you probably trade it up. It's like use our actual programming language embedded in our platform. That's good.
Well, but it's still Node or Python just inside of their framework. So it's a certain way that you're broadcasting snippets of code. So it's almost an abstraction of Docker would be an easier way to think of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was all AWS. Yeah, I mean, this is great. I think even with money stuff, it's really, it's smart. But
You're specifically referring to lack of type safety for dealing with money?
all the sort of conversion units type stuff
Okay.
has some scary implications for numbers. When you go to numbers, just trying to get back to that stuff. I will say, if you're building you guys and using some of these spec formats, there's some pretty cool different approaches to using it, but there's ways to sort of like generate out your API stubs from the specs. So there's like basic code gen stuff, but I'll give props to Trevor Livingston, one of our coordinated engineers at PayPal. He built this thing called Swagerize Express. And it's pretty cool because it's actually like tied to the spec to like layout controllers. It does some aspect of code gen, but then it's actually kind of tied into it and validating and doing a lot more of the things. I got some pretty positive sentiment from the Express folks. I told me today, it's like, I'm holding direction now. It's like one of these guys that has crazy weekends and comes back with new projects.
I think we've all met a few of those. I rewrote the code base over the weekend. No! Cool. Anybody else have any questions?
Jason, I have a question. What's your thought on versioning? Do you have any particular preferences around versioning strategies?
Yeah, I used to really shy away from this question because like it's there's so many opinions and it's like I think and I guess even I'm being where I can say it now because even that's what Braintree is like. If you look at Stripe's version, we actually they use header-based version. And it's basically a big when we release one out. We did something like that when we started to use it, and it scared the crap out of me because the idea is what happens when you don't supply the header. You don't want to require headers. That's bad form, right? So if you don't supply this version header, what do you get? And the tendency is, well, you get the print version. But like that's the worst case scenario because then every new integrator who's lazy and doesn't read the docs with the red letters that say, please pass this header, it's going to break, they break the next time you push a version. So Stripe's approach to it is actually to pin the version to your account the first time you call it, which I think is a pretty novel approach and fixes the problem. So if you don't specify a version when you call it, you're authenticated with your account, actually keep track of that, and then in your dashboard you can go select what your default version is. So that if you want to be lazy and not pass the header around, or you just maybe you don't like headers, I don't know, then you can get the correct version of the response and change it in one place. That's probably in reality of low utility, no one really does that. They just learn to use the header when it's time for a change later, or without getting broken.
So then my question is, are you sniffing their configuration in part of your routing story? Like as they go through a gateway, we just notice that you're in this version, route you over here?
How is it implemented, you're asking?
Right.
So if you search for Amber Feng, F-E-N-G, in Stripe, she's done a number of talks on this. I think the one thing to realize with Stripe is they also have this commitment to like supporting all prior old versions, which is kind of terrifying. I mean, I'll say that like PayPal's never shut down any APIs they built, so but they incorporate breaking changes along the way. So some of those versions are input breaking changes, and they're supporting all of them live. So that's highly dependent on having a monolithic stack. They're all like movie shop. I think doing that in a distributed microservices system is a heck of a lot harder problem to solve. But maybe it's not. I think the implementation side of it, like, there's never one story that's the same on that stuff, right? But as far as like, can you intercept that with a proxy and route it to the appropriate server with the right version on it? Maybe, but what happens if you find a security flaw in those import versions, or you get back to that feature branch? And
right.
Like, that's all like totally dependent on how your process works and how you deal with maintaining all the versions. I think like the sexy way to do it is we're going to maintain one code base that handles all the concurrent versions. But I've seen that go down rocky roads too. So to some extent, like the semantics of the version stuff isn't that bad. I used to be really big on the URL stuff, especially for like public APIs. And really, the upshot of it is it encourages a lot of design thinking because changing URLs means now I'm changing the URL, and I'm only going to show one major version. So if you do 10 iterations, you're going to be on /v10. You know, the section of that API with the URL with this version, level one, you can't screw it up. Again, it's a required parameter. It's in the URL, so you have to pass it and get a 404. That's good, and it projects the image that we are stable. You know, we have V1 and V2 like GitHub, right? V1, V2, V3 over like a 5-year period. That implies stability. So from the product standpoint, like, that's good. But when you look at like Twilio, they did this same kind of deal where I think there's actually those in the URL, if I remember right, but it's like a database version. So you can look through all their old versions and see a chronology. The first like year was like version. Then they hit like June 2010 or something, and it's like, this is a mature product, it works. And that's still the current version. And they haven't broken compatibility since then. So like having the compatibility to rapidly iterate and then maybe start slowing down the pace and getting to a point of not breaking compatibility is pretty cool. I've come to like having that ability. Even though the reality of the customer management side of the public is scary. You have that close relationship with the customer doing your integration and to that breaking changes. But if you're cool enough to handle all of the UI anyways, they don't move. If they're happy with the mobile one, it doesn't have a cool new side. I think like I've worked with other kind of like helping out startups and stuff where you do that stuff. The problem is sometimes in price you later in data migration, or like you need a deprecate field. You're like, cool, we deprecated, it's gone. So later we're going to go back and remove that data. But then when you go to do that, you don't look and see who's using a different version and find out like, back to the customer using a version, how we can move over. And so that's what I think the customer relationship is important to rapid iteration. So incredibly nuanced topic. But a good story. Strategies tells a good story. I can imagine that there must be many messages behind it, but let's see.